Today's lesson invites us to explore another dimension of God's love, of God's peace that we speak of all the time, the great shalom. And today we're invited to explore a little more intently the notion of mercy and grace. Jesus extends mercy, and also he extends a type of grace. You see, mercy and grace are dimensions of God's love, oftentimes seen as the mercy-grace coin, that they are opposite, they are different sides of the same coin. They are connected together uniquely, and we experience mercy and grace in a variety of different ways. If we think about mercy, it is, in a sense, it's relieving a certain type of pain or suffering, or withholding a certain kind of a negative judgment or something like this. It's the withholding of some sort of pain or the relieving of it as well. Grace is more of an actual gift. It's the gift that has been given. We might say our lives are filled with gifts. We look at our families, we look at our friends, we look at our faith, our church, our basic welfare, and we can see if we look at these sorts of things that these are dimensions of God's love that are coming through us. And that's a powerful thing. The challenge that we have sometimes, I think, is to distinguish the bounty that we've received with the pain and suffering that we recognize in others throughout the world. And how does this work? Today's story is about Jesus heading to Jerusalem for the very last time. And that's the time that he goes into the temple, spends about a week, and ends up dying and rising again. And on the way, he is passing through Galilee and into Samaria. But today's lesson shows him right at the tip of Samaria, the bottom part of Galilee. And he's confronted with, or by, 10 lepers. People who have a skin disease that has made them truly marked people. And in the day, people who had leprosy were viewed as being punished by God. So not only did you have a disease of some sort that scarred you and this type of thing, but you also came away with the feeling that you were being punished by God. And on top of that, you were moved out of your community. You moved into what they call a leper colony, where just lepers lived. And so you had all this isolation, you had the sense of being judged and the shame of that. And it was just an incredibly difficult situation. And so these 10 lepers understand somehow that there's something special enough about Jesus that they ask for his mercy. They're asking for some sort of a relief. And Jesus looks at them and in essence, he gives it to them. He says, go and show yourselves to the priests. Well, one came back. One of the 10 came back. And he fell on his knees and he thanked God, he thanked Jesus. He was so amazed that he was now made clean. And 9 did not come back. But what happens with the one who comes back to Jesus and recognizes that he was made clean is that Jesus says to him, it is your faith that made you well. Your faith. You may get up and you may go on your way. Jesus gives him a gift of faith to recognize just how powerful God can be and how his life has been touched. We don't know for sure what happens to the other 9. We know they have been mercifully healed. We don't know if they count that as a gift. We don't know if they take it for granted. We're really not quite sure exactly what happens. The story doesn't give us any further insight. But it does give us an opportunity to pause and to imagine this world, this kingdom experience, how God works through people in a variety of ways. And imagine how much of the time we have been touched by mercy and not even know it. Our lives go on, and we have this opportunity to live, and we may not even recognize just how much God has worked through others to give us a wholeness of life. When we think about this issue of mercy and grace and try to just unpack it a little bit, I think it invites us to think for a moment about how do we see God? What is our understanding of God? Is God a God of love, peace, compassion, mercy, forgiveness? Is God a God of vengeance? A God of war? It's an age-old question. Is it a little bit of both? Maybe. But as Christians, we're invited to dive into this a little more intently and ask ourselves the question, how did Jesus articulate God's love? It's important for us to take note of that. You see, there's a lot of people in the world, some maybe right here, that accept the vengeful God in a very strong way and live in fear of doing the wrong thing and being punished in a remarkable way. How do we see God? You know, people saw God in Jesus' time as a little bit of everything. They saw leprosy as God's judgment upon others. We can fast forward a few thousand years to the 1990s, and we can see another demonstration of a type of leprosy. It's different, actually, but AIDS was viewed as the leprosy of the 20th century. People who had leprosy were judged by many to be punished for a lifestyle, to be punished by God, and to be isolated. We didn't fully understand how it happens and this type of thing, but to have AIDS in the 90s meant that you were likely judged by society, condemned to a life of isolation, and a painful, lonely death. Beth and I were certainly moved by this years ago, and two of our clients were agencies that dealt with those with AIDS. And to see that pain and suffering, and to, one could just understand how much pain and suffering humanity can lay on another in the name of God. You know, I wonder I wonder, when I think about the storm that just took place, I wonder about the people in Puerto Rico and Cuba and Florida, for openers. I wonder how those people process what happened to them. Was God punishing us for something? There are those who would say so. Are we damned and are we doomed? Maybe. But certainly these people, all people who have been impacted by this storm, are crying just as the 10 lepers cried for mercy. Help! God's people begin to respond and try to provide the most help possible under a very, very difficult situation. You know, I think when I think about mercy and grace, I do think that the grace, that gift of relief, that gift of taking some pain away, is very much the license of those who believe. It's our opportunity to extend this mercy, and people are looking for it. And if it doesn't happen with us, it's not really going to happen. God calls us into this reality, recognizing that we've been given the gift of faith. It's tough. It's not easy to put these things together and make a lot of sense of it. In our world, we can sometimes look at people merely as machines. You're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. Do it right and it will be good. But if we keep unpacking this issue of mercy and grace, we begin to recognize that humanity, each one of us, we're human. We're not machines. We're all impacted by the world in a variety of different ways. The Spirit of God is moving through us, but also other spirits as well. How do we live into this? How we treat others, how we treat ourselves, how we treat each other, how we treat the world with mercy and or grace will define the quality of our lives, not only here, but moving forward. How do we properly manage the life that we've been given? Do we see everything we do as an opportunity to extend a measure of mercy and to receive a little grace? I watched a lot of baseball over the years, and I noticed the coaching changed as the levels went up. It never ceased to amaze me at the high school level and even a little above how coaches would just berate players who had an error, calling them all kinds of names and all kinds of words, that they're the worst person in the world because they made an error and they let the team down. I can tell you, it never produced good fruit. There's no ball player who wants to make an error. Every ball player is trying to do the best he or she can. But people in power have a choice to make a decision as to how I'm going to treat the situation. I could rather, instead of yelling at the kid, say, you know what, Ralph? Don't worry about it. You gave it a good try. Just remember to move a little more to this or that. We can, and we're okay. We're going to pick ourselves up and we're going to keep moving. How do we deal with problems? When we're in community, I'll give you just one other example. When we're in community, sometimes people are late. Sometimes they're running late. And we have a choice. We can judge. We say not to be late. The person already knows they're not to be late, but they're late. Or we can be merciful. I'm so glad you're here. I was worried that maybe something terrible happened. You can see life in a variety of different ways. But in the end, we are given this faith to further extend ourselves in God's kingdom and to explore within ourselves exactly how am I operating in this time and in this space, because I've got the opportunity to always be an extension of God's love, sometimes through mercy. And what usually happens is if someone has received some mercy, they begin to be filled also with the love of God, recognizing, just as that one leper did, that I've been given the gift of faith. Gracious God, we thank you for today's lesson, and I pray that each one of us can explore this rather, tricky lesson more, and that we can learn, we can continue to learn and enjoy your presence in our life. Amen.